All right, let's try again.
So call it order again.
Please. Yes, please.
You ready? Okay, we're going to go ahead and call our July work session to get to order tonight and turn it over to Dr. Howard for Superintendent's Comments.
All right, thank you very much. I want to welcome everyone. I hope that we have some community members who are tuning in tonight via YouTube and live streaming, and we are glad to have our board here with us tonight. We're socially distanced and honoring all the recommendations that exist for safety, but it's great to be together. This has been an odd time for all of us, and I want to send a very special thank you out to our schools that have worked really hard in the month of June and preparing for what we hope to be a great reopening as soon as we can. And of course, we'll talk about that in just a minute. Before I get into the general comments that I have here, I do want to apologize on behalf of myself and the board, because we were trying really hard to get some community involvement on Tuesday night, and we certainly did not expect the turnout that we had for our meeting on Tuesday. Had lots of people share on Facebook, but we've had that with community meetings that we only had 3 people show up to. So we didn't expect the kind of turnout. We were thrilled with the turnout. I want to thank our staff who were able to quickly pull in our YouTube. And so we're working diligently to improve our communication there. But the feedback that we received from our community in the COVID conversation on Tuesday has really helped us to develop a plan that we'll present to the board this evening. Tuesday night, the intent was just to get feedback. And then in addition to that, yesterday we met with groups of teachers through digital format like this and got feedback from over 350 of our teachers. So we're excited and feel good about the plan to return that we have to share with you this evening. And again, apologize for the challenge that occurred Tuesday, but are very excited that we were able to get some good feedback. Just a reminder to the board that we're scheduled for our official July meeting on Monday. And my recommendation is that we have the meeting here, and it is a short agenda. So if you'd like the board members to have it as a Zoom meeting or a Google Meet, we can certainly do that. There are very few items other than action items that we'll talk about this evening. So you all think about that and let me know. I did ask for our high school principals to join us this evening to talk a little bit about the graduation plans. And just as a reminder, we are still under a state of emergency until August the 11th. Midnight on August the 11th, and we have been asked to not have a gathering of more than 50 people unless you can effectively social distance and provide masks and all the interventions. So we've been, our high school principals and our high schools have been working really hard to honor our graduates, the graduating class of 2020, and have worked hard to make sure that we are able to follow those guidelines and still have an in-person graduation. So I asked Mr. Wester and Ms. Palmer to join us tonight, and I'm going to see if I could get them to give just a brief overview. Friday night will be Jackson County High School, and next Saturday morning, the 18th at 8 o'clock, will be East Jackson. So since Jackson County is first, I'm going to ask Mr. Wester if you can give just a brief overview of the plans that you have in place for the graduation.
Absolutely. Good evening, everybody. We are excited to have a commencement ceremony for our seniors on Friday, July 17th. And the way that we have it sketched out at this point is we have marked out in Panther Stadium spacing that will allow our family groups to be separated by 6 feet of distance from each other as they sit in the stadium. And we believe that we can accommodate 8 tickets per student in that configuration based on the responses we've gotten to the numbers of students that we believe will be attending the ceremony. We'll be able to finalize that in the morning, making sure that we believe it's about 8 students eight guests per student that will be able to allow to come into the stadium to participate and still keep a 6-foot distance between groups of 8 or less. So that's what we're hoping to do there. We will also separate our students by 6 feet on the stadium grass to allow them to keep social distance from each other during the ceremony. And we've also limited the participation of our staff and others to just the necessary folks to try to keep as much as we can to social distancing and preventing any kind of spread as much as possible. We will provide masks for folks that come into the stadium and give them an opportunity if they need to receive a mask. We'll have those available to them. And we'll also provide hand sanitizers and whatnot in each of our entrances to allow as much as possible for protocols to be in place to keep folks from getting any type of contact with the virus if we can. We will have a practice the morning of, and we'll also help our students through that to make sure they're maintaining social distance as we practice for the ceremony later on that evening. Kind of what we have in place right now, we're very confident that that we can put this on in a way that will be as safe as possible for our students and for their families.
Thank you, Mr. Wester. I don't know if any of the board members have any questions related to that. You might want to, Mr. Wester, if you don't mind, you're going to be able to seat a couple more people per graduate because you have fewer kids who are attending from East High. Is that correct? How many students do you have right now that tentatively are planning to attend?
The last number that I was aware of, Dr. Howard, was about 160. And we can seat up to 200 students in the configuration that we have currently in place with about 8 students per, 8 guests per student. If we get above 200, we'll have to kind of modify that seating arrangement, and it would be lower. But we had about 250 graduates altogether this year. But when we did our walkthrough ceremony a little bit earlier, a lot of those students, at least so far, have not indicated that they wish to participate in the second ceremony. So we do have some that are doubling up. We have quite a few who are not as of right now. We did put a final push out to our seniors to make sure that we're including everyone that wanted to be included. And we hope to have that final push finished by tomorrow to know our final number. But as of right now, the number is below 200. And if we can keep it below 200, 8 would be the number of guests that we can accommodate.
Perfect. All right. Any questions for Mr. Wester?
No, that was my concern. Right?
Okay.
The interest right there, so that's good.
All right, very good. Thank you, Mr. Wester. I appreciate that. And we will maybe ask you to mute, and maybe Ms. Palmer, if you could tell us a little bit about your plan.
Thank you, and good evening to everyone. Next weekend will be a very busy weekend for East Jackson High School. We start actually on Friday morning with our graduation practice, and we will group students outside. Normally we would do this in the gym, but because of social distancing and other restrictions, we'll be doing that outside. We'll practice in the stadium. They will still have their senior breakfast. It will be a grab and go this year. And we are also still going to do senior pictures. We will do individual pictures because we're not able to do a group picture for them this year. However, our Melanie Longhorn, who is our yearbook coordinator, is working with our photographer to do a collage of our students' individual pictures, so they will have something in the form of a group picture that they will have for years to come. So we'll do that Friday morning. Then Friday evening, we're doing our Honors Day ceremony in our auditorium. And unfortunately, we were not able to invite parents to this event because, again, of social distancing restrictions. But all of our seniors that are being recognized have been invited, and we will live stream that event so that parents can watch from home and participate in that way. And then, of course, on Saturday morning, we will finally have a graduation. And our kids are very excited about it. They were very clear from the beginning that they wanted as much of a traditional graduation as we could provide for them. So we will be able to provide our students 6 tickets at a minimum. We're hoping we might can stretch that just a little bit with some final measurements in the stadium next week, but we do believe it will be 6. And we are a little different than Jackson County High School, as was mentioned earlier. Both schools gave students the opportunity to walk through and get their diplomas back in June. At East Jackson, we only had 22 students who wanted to participate in that way. The majority of our students wanted to do face-to-face in the stadium. So we're expecting closer to 198 of our seniors to be present on the field on Saturday morning. And like Mr. Wester, at his school, we will be social distancing. We will be providing masks and encouraging students to wear them, but not requiring them. Our staff will be wearing masks. And it'll look very similar to a traditional graduation ceremony. We will have a small group of band students and a small group of chorus students there to perform. And again, we just plan to get these students graduated and to celebrate with them. We're very excited about it.
Any questions for Ms. Palmer?
What was their date?
Their date is Saturday, July 18th at 8 a.m. in the morning. And do it before it gets hot.
Yes, ma'am.
And hopefully dodge the afternoon showers as well.
May I ask,
Sure.
so what about numbers? How many people are going to be allowed to come with ready?
6.
6
6.
per graduate.
6 for her and for me.
Right, that's
For both
correct.
schools?
No, 8.
6 for East High and 8 for Jackson County. Mhm. Yep, absolutely. Ms. Palmer and Mr. Wester, thank you all so much. I know that you have responded to a very difficult situation, just so that our board know, I know that you're aware of this, but both of our high school principals have their own graduating seniors. So
Yes.
they are very committed. They would be anyway,
Sure.
but they certainly are very committed to trying to do the very best for our kids. And so we are very grateful for the hard work that you've put in trying to honor these kids. And thank you for that. So you're welcome to stay with us. If you have other things that you need to attend to, have a great evening. Either way. Thank you again. All right. We'll go back to our agenda and look at the reopening plan. And I'm going to bring this up. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at this, but this is probably what most of our families are most interested in. And you will notice that this still says draft, because ultimately we need for you all to feel very comfortable excuse me, I have to admit somebody. We need you all to feel very comfortable in the way that we go about going to school. Now, let me tell you that we were given, and I've shared this with you, we were given some guidance from the State Department in early June that had a spread level, low to no spread. The middle was moderate to, minor spread. And then the far left was significant spread. And we were given guidance as to how to respond based on those levels. However, we were never given guidance on how they determined what level your area was given. And then we were led to believe that we were going to receive some information that would tell us how to determine where our community fell in terms of low to moderate to significant spread. We didn't ever get that specific guidance. And in our FAQs, that guidance is still there because that's what we were given. We learned today that we don't have it yet, but evidently the Department of Public Health has moved away from that guidance and is going to provide us a different approach through a decision tree. We've not received that yet. So to be very candid with you, we're really trying to make decisions as the information is changing. And so we don't know yet what that decision tree might look like. We can use some common sense, but I think that the Department of Public Health is now recommending to the Department of Education that they lean more towards a different approach, which really has more to do with tracking it and trying to figure out where the virus is spreading. So I only tell you that because there is frustration in our community, but there's frustration everywhere because the information is changing pretty rapidly, and we're trying to be real proactive, and we're trying to get ahead and get some information to our community and get feedback from our community. But it almost seems like as soon as we do that the information tends to change. So it's not a criticism. This is the first time anybody has done this. So we're all trying to figure out, including the Department of Public Health and the governor and everybody else. So this is not a slag at anyone. It's just a recognition of the reality. So what we're presenting to you is what we think is the best plan now. 3 to 4 weeks from now, if we get different guidance and we are told by a higher authority that we have to do things differently, then we'll just have to reconvene and revisit it. But based on the feedback that we received earlier throughout the week, we were really thinking that it might be beneficial to our parents to start remotely, to start engaging kids. The feedback that we got was that was going to be more of a hindrance than it was going to be a help. And so what we're recommending in this plan is that we delay the start of school until after basically until the end of the state of emergency, which ends on August the 11th, which would have us starting school on August the 12th. And so if we start on August the 12th, we do have an amended calendar that I'll show to you in just a minute. There's also some updated information that Mr. Nicholson and his team are providing for what the instructional delivery model looks like. This may be more information than you want, but I would encourage you to look at that when you have a chance. Remote learning is different than, this sounds crazy, distance learning in terms of a commitment from a parent. So we consider remote learning what we would do if the whole district had to go back into a shelter in place so that everybody was at home. That would be remote learning because everybody has to learn remotely. What we're asking parents to make a choice about is knowing what particular precautions we can effectively put in place. Parents have a choice as to whether or not they send their children for the equivalent of a traditional experience with precautions as much as we can, or they can select a distance virtual learning experience. A distance virtual learning experience means that it's a little bit more independent. They will not have a teacher on the other side of the computer with them all day. They may stop in for office hours, but it will be more self-paced and it'll be more like an academy approach. And so that's the option that you'll see. Mr. Nicholson and his team have done a fantastic job of providing some additional information. If you click here, you can see that it describes the difference in those. It gives a program overview of what those look like. And so we wanted to get this out to parents. And if you approve this recommendation, it's really not something I don't think that has to be actionable, but we wanted you to feel good about it. So if you feel good about this plan, we're going to push this out in the upcoming days to our families through Infinite Campus and through social media to say, okay, here are the things that we are able to offer, and let families make a commitment based on this information. This is a little bit more information for them to make an informed decision. And we wanted them to have all the information before they made a commitment, because we're not going to hire additional staff to accommodate the distance learning format. What we're going to have to do is identify students who have elected to be distance learning, pull them out of the existing schedules that they're in, and then we're going to have to redistribute staff. So it's quite a heavy lift for both teaching and learning and personnel, because we're basically going to have to reorganize the entire district, which is worth doing because we want to accommodate the needs of families. But it's not a situation where we can have parents and students come in and out, because once we kind of establish, okay, this is our distance learning cohort and these are our classrooms, then it's going to be difficult for kids to come in and out. So we're asking them to commit to at least the first semester. If you decide that you want to do distance learning, then you're committing to at least the first semester. So that's sort of a general overview. Mr. Nicholson, I know that you're out there. I don't know if you want to speak a little bit further to the work that's going on, or maybe you plan to do that later, but I'll offer that you provide any additional insight here.
I'm happy to do so, Dr. Howard. So you hit a lot of the high points. I will point out that if you're trying to access that document and you can't get access to it, if you go further down into this evening's agenda, where there's a item that says, let me toggle back to my screen here, instructional delivery model. If you're having a hard time, if you're out if you're trying to access it, you can access it there as well. But I think what you'll see is that we do want the experience to be remarkable. We're always committed to remarkable learning experiences. And so what we've tried to do here is to, as much as possible, mirror the instructional day. But when you have students that are at home versus students that are in a school, you can't exactly mirror that. But we've put great effort forward to make sure that we have a blend of Google Meet sessions, project-based learning, some independent work. We've got some very robust software programs that will also be utilized. I don't want people to think it's just a student sitting on a computer all day long and that there's not a human on the other end of that. We're very much committed to making sure that Jackson County teachers, as much as possible, are consistently available to provide feedback, support. So what I would encourage folks to do that are interested is to take a look at this document. Certainly feel free to reach out to myself or anyone on the teaching and learning team. But it's not, what I would tell you is it's not exactly what we did, as Dr. Howard mentioned, remote learning. On March 13th, we decided we were not going to be back in school on March 16th. I've said this several times, our teachers did a phenomenal job, but they had absolutely no training and they had 1 weekend of preparation. And so what we did during the springtime, I'm very proud of. I think we did, again, a remarkable job, but we have time to plan for this, to prepare for this. So as parents choose this option, it won't look exactly like it did in the spring. And in elementary, you'll see an increased number of, it'll take basically the same amount of time as a school day. You'll see an increased amount of Google Meets, small group sessions, independent sessions. Middle school, you have a blend of collaboration with your peers and your teacher and some independent time. And then as you get to high school, there's you're on the other end of the continuum where there's a little bit greater emphasis on some of the independent time as a student, and pacing is a little bit more flexible, but there's always a teacher or a learning coach that's associated with that. So it's It's not just having a student sit in front of a computer and complete a program. But I feel like we've at least been able to provide a vision for our families. So as Dr. Howard talks in a few minutes about the surveys and the decisions that we're asking people to make, that we're asking people to be able to make an informed decision at that point. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them at this point in time, though.
Do you want questions now? Or should, okay, Mr. Nixon. So I've had some ask what it is going to look like, and I've read through it and others read through it, and is there a way that we can give them a sample of what it's going to look like, actual, that may sound silly, I don't know, but what it's actually going to look like besides just the writing itself. Is there another model that they can look at? How can they see exactly what it's going to be?
Sure. We are creating that, so I couldn't provide you the exact example right now, but what I could tell you, probably the easiest way for me to answer that is based on grade band. You would have, going back to the spring, we did, like I said, I feel like teachers did an amazing job, but when we have teachers that are designated to distance learning and they know that is their full-time job and that they're going to provide this support for students, part of what we're looking at is combining students across the district. So if you've got, I'm making this number up, 75 fourth grade students, then you will have designated teachers for those fourth graded students who essentially spend their entire day with those fourth grade students, much like you would at face-to-face. Whereas I think what we experienced a little bit more in the spring was you had a Google Meet, you had a lot of independent time, you had maybe another Google Meet, but we realized that for folks to choose this model at the elementary level, you really, parents are working, they're busy, they can't be the ones that are providing the instruction. So our goal there is to come as close as possible to mirroring what it would look like during the day. So you have a language arts time, you have a math time, science, social studies. Specials present a little bit of a challenge for us. Your core teachers there that are teaching this would have to integrate some of the things like PE and art into the curriculum. At the middle school level, it would be a little bit more of a blend where you might have a team of 2 teachers instead of maybe going through 4 to 6 classes a day. You might have 2 teachers that are team teaching, so that again you have some whole group time where maybe the teacher is doing teacher facilitated, teacher directed instruction. Then he or she would pull students aside for small groups, but you would still have some designated time for your core content as well as some electives. And we're looking at a software platform that will allow us to expand the number of electives that we could add. And then at high school is just a really complicated situation. You can have 120 students with 90 different schedules, and that makes it very difficult. So the high school option certainly would be one that involves a little bit heavier emphasis on student independence, working at their own pace, their own speed, still with Jackson County teachers providing feedback, but at the high school level, you probably wouldn't be able to replicate the school day like we did in the spring, meaning that they have a designated time each day with their teachers, because we just don't have enough teachers to provide that based on the number of courses that are offered at the high school. Did that come close to answering your question?
I know that's a hard question to talk, Mr. Nixon, and I appreciate it. And I have some of my kids did very well with virtual learning, and I think I'm excited to see it unfold, because I think it has a lot of potential for some kids, and that's why I think if there's a way, I don't know if a mock classroom, I don't know, but I would like for some parents to be able to see the difference from the spring to what we're going to offer, and I think it may be more enticing to some.
I agree.
I appreciate your work on that, though.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Nicholson. And one of the questions that's come up, I think, pretty regularly in the beginning, and this is still for consideration, I think, is will elementary have the option to revisit at the quarter mark at 9 weeks? For high school and middle school, it's very difficult to do it at 9 weeks, but I think that that's probably something that we can look at depending upon availability based on what, the need is. But that's one of the questions that came up. If you see us texting, we're trying to make sure that we're answering all the questions. Nobody's texting anything personal. We're trying to make sure we're attending to all of it. So that's what it is. All right. Please.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir. Please.
Can I ask two?
You ask anything you want. That's why we're here. Not saying we have all the answers, but we'll try.
So, first question, you explained the remote learning, the distance virtual experience, and traditional. So I have that figured out. What I kind of want to understand is if you are one of these students that falls into a quarantine period, what do you do for those 2 weeks? Do you get dumped into virtual, or do you get your own remote, or are you treated like somebody that would normally be sick in a normal school year?
Mr. Nixon, we can both speak to that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that. So Mr. Clarsey, the thinking right now is that if you're exposed and you're not sick and you needed to be out of school for a while, there's no reason to automatically change your learning environment. We would treat like we would anything else. Whether if you're at high school, your teachers would continue to send assignments home. We're very confident that we can make that happen. If you find out towards the end of your quarantine that you're symptomatic and it's going to be longer than 2 weeks, our plan is that we would then at that point extend the opportunity to join the distance learning if that was the better option. But just by being sick doesn't mean that you automatically have to go into the distance learning. That's kind of our safety net for those who were sick and couldn't stay up on, with their work. But if they're asymptomatic and they can keep doing the work, there's no reason to completely disrupt their lifestyle and preclude them from rejoining their classmates and friends.
Okay, you did a good job anticipating one of my other questions, so I'm going to think of another one to replace it. So my next question, a teacher that goes into quarantine, are we going to replace, assuming they're gone for 14 days, are we going to replace the teachers with a sub? Or do we,
That's fine.
how do we do that? And then if the teacher becomes, the illness progresses, do we treat that as we would someone that's out on an extended illness in a normal situation? So I'm curious about that.
Yeah, we've talked about that a lot, and Dr. Blankenship is monitoring questions, so I'll answer what our recent plan is, and that is if they're asymptomatic and they can provide instruction, we'll use a digital means for them still to provide instruction distantly from home, but then we'll use a sub for supervision purposes in the classroom. So we'll still allow them to help us facilitate the learning and have contact with them. If they get symptoms and they're sick and they can't interact, then at that point, we'll look at getting a sub that's qualified to instruct at that level, or potentially divvy those students up depending on class sizes at that time and have other teachers take on, especially at the high school level. If you're talking about a pretty heavy lift class, if there's another teacher that can help until that teacher returns, then we'll go that route as well. Todd, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, or Dr. Blankenship. You probably were busy.
You answered it.
Okay, that's what we've talked about.
There you go. One other question about the distance virtual experience. We have to commit for the semester or possibly for the quarter. So how rigid are we going to be if I commit and 3 weeks into it, it's just either my situation at home changes or it's just totally disastrous? What process do you anticipate following to allow somebody to apply to come back in to the school or vice versa?
I would say.
I was about to say, I can answer that. We do have some verbiage in there, Mr. Clarsey. Obviously, if somebody committed to it and they're not successful, there's no way that we would require them to continue to stay in that environment. It's much easier for us to bring students into the face-to-face environment. We know that if somebody chooses the distance learning and for whatever reason that doesn't work, we can accommodate. It's actually a little bit harder for us to go the other way, but what we don't want parents and families and students to do is to jump back and forth, which is why we're asking for semester commitment, but we are committed to the success of all students. So we would never require somebody to stay in an environment that was precluding them from being successful. We would make the necessary changes and accommodations at that point.
Can I ask one more?
Please.
You got one more, Don? No. Your the floor is yours.
No, go ahead.
So sorry, it made me think. So can you do both? Is there a way that kids can be on campus and then have one class that they just want to do virtually?
So one of the questions that came up, Todd, that I was going to respond to is, can we do hybrids, which is basically what I think for some part,
Yes.
Mr. Hollett is asking. And so when we spoke to our teachers yesterday, we said the ideal model of the future is hybrid, but it's going to take a good bit of time for us to get to that point. So Todd, I don't know if you want to speak to that further.
Sure. I mean, you essentially said it, Dr. Howard. That is our long-term goal. Right now, what we're trying to do is to create 2 learning environments that can accommodate the diversity of needs, that whether it's it's exclusively distance learning or exclusively in person. We're using this as a catalyst, this being the COVID and everything that's going on in the world, to be able to expedite some of the work that we've been planning on. We're not prepared to roll out a hybrid model right now, but that is what we've been talking about for years, is that we flip the script and say that learning is constant, but the time, the pace, and place are variable. But due to just the sheer numbers of people who are requiring or requesting distance learning, we're basically doing 3 years worth of work in a month. So what we'd like to ask people to do is just to be patient with us and let us work on this model first, and then over the course of the next year or so, as we perfect this, to figure out how we can build that hybrid model in. But absolutely, that is a part of the vision. But we've got to attend to the most immediate needs right now, which is either face-to-face or distance.
And part of the reason, go ahead. I'm sorry. I was just saying, part of the reason for that is for us to really effectively achieve hybrid, we have to have full implementation of Canvas. And we have teachers that are at different places in the implementation of Canvas, because that's our vehicle for being able to do it. It puts all of the learning resources in one location. So
Okay, 2 more.
please.
Okay, and
I promise.
no, that's fine, because I've got one too, so that's fine.
We may not have a simple answer for these 2, but when I went through the response to the illness, so I'll revolve it around this: an asymptomatic persons who have known exposure to a person with COVID-19 without appropriate PPE, was in close contact less than 6 feet for 15 or more minutes, may return to school or work after. Who's the police?
Yeah, who's going to police that? Yeah.
Police that.
So,
Yeah.
right, so just in full transparency, we spent about 2 hours today with all of Northeast Georgia RESA Board of Control superintendents talking about line 3, because that's the guidance from the Department of Public Health. We've been told that we report this to the Department of Public Health, and our policing of that really is supposed to be the Department of Public Health. And we use our clinic aides and our lead nurse, Rhonda Brewer, to help guide that work. So that's not something that individuals all over the district are going to make decisions about. Everything will funnel through our lead nurse and the Department of Public Health. So, and the part of this that's a little bit challenging is there is a continuum of interpretation there. So let's take, for example, if you're in a classroom of 27 students, then potentially you could close that classroom for 2 weeks, because every student in that classroom was exposed, potentially. If you take a high school student, that high school student may have been in 5-7 classrooms. So you may be talking about, but the piece there that I think is key is 15 minutes and within 6 feet of them, so that you had somewhat of a consistent exposure. It wasn't just, I passed them in the hallway once. Right. But the policing is definitely the part that is, I mean, that's what has everybody across the state a little bit paralyzed. And I don't think it's that there's a lack of guidance. It's just there's mixed guidance. There's
And that's a big job.
it's a
to try
big
to police
job.
that.
It is.
So my last question, you may not have the answer to this today either, but I'm hopeful to have a little discussion. Who's gonna regulate these kids that are participating in high school athletics that, either should be quarantined or shouldn't be, and whether they're competing or practicing afterwards? Maybe the coach is, maybe he's not teaching this semester, or maybe he's a lay coach and he's really the guy they see, and he just shows up and boom, there the student is ready for practice or ready for the event. I'm just kind of curious as to, because I know we don't have the answer to everything, but I've been a little curious about who's going to say, hey, I know you're here and you're dressed, but you're not playing. Is that going to be the responsibility of the coach, the principal?
So
What can we expect?
So I think that it's summertime right now, and they have protocols that they're following. They're taking temperatures, they're doing all of those things every day before they come. The protocol that they're following. The thing that I would say is every student athlete is a student first. So when they come to school, it's that every single teacher, we're providing training on what to look for. Now, we haven't gotten to these details yet with you all. We're not planning to take temperatures of every child every day. We just don't feel like we have the manpower to do that. And we've been told that the accuracy of that, coming in on a 90-degree day and taking, 1,600 kids' temperature. Yeah, exactly. But to answer your question, we're going to have to trust the protocols that we've put in place and the training that we've done. Both of our athletic directors have met with all of our coaches on a regular basis. They're monitoring what's happening at practices, and we're going to have to really count on them to follow through. So that's the message that we have now.
I worry more about the other schools that we do as well.
You worry about what now? The other schools that we're playing. Yeah. Yeah.
We're not
Yeah.
following the same.
Yeah.
Well, and we don't know yet if we're
We
going to
don't
play.
know if we're playing.
I mean, right now, GHSA has not provided any guidance on whether or not we'll do cross-school competitions. And we got some guidance today that there's a little bit different guidance for softball than there is for, I don't know if you saw that. So
I've heard a little bit about it. That's what made me started thinking about some of this.
So I wish that I felt like I had all the answers, but honestly, there's different information coming to us from different avenues, and not everybody's getting all the same information. So, and I don't mean to be irresponsible about it. We know what we know, and we're responding as we get the information. But today was the first time all but one of the superintendents had heard about the GHSA guidelines for softball being different than those that were presented earlier. So it's just, everything's changing quickly.
And we open up August the 6th, or scheduled to open up August the 6th, Jackson County, fast pitch is. So I've been hearing from a few people wondering about that. So I spoke with Brad Hayes today about some of this. We went a little deeper. I won't share all of that, but my hope is, and I trust Dr. Howard, this is what we will do, that we will follow the rules. And if we don't have coaches and we don't have players and we can't play, then we just
Absolutely.
don't play.
Absolutely. Agreed.
So
Student and staff safety has to be the cornerstone to everything we do.
Yeah.
Everything.
It does.
So-
It does.
But I appreciate you bringing that point up because it is a hot topic. It was a discussion today. And so there's a couple, you have
Well,
questions.
yeah, I just wanted to ask about sick leave for the teachers.
That's
I'm just thinking that, the teacher has come to work, they have contracted the virus, they wind up with really, truly testing positive, and they run out of sick days.
Well, they
Yeah.
don't have to use their sick days the first 80 hours. So you want to speak to that, Ms. Lula?
Correct.
Ms.
Yes,
Dr. Blanchett?
so there's emergency paid sick leave that is provided by the federal government, and that provides up to 80 hours for, there are 6 different reasons that sick leave can be used.
Okay.
It does not go against their personal sick leave for that first 80 hours, and they can, it doesn't have to all be used at the same time. So they may have a situation where they are caring for someone that is, has tested positive, but they only need that leave for a couple of days.
Yeah.
And then, they would be able to come back to work. And so they would have up to 80 hours that can be used in total. Beyond that, there is also an expanded FMLA reason that they can take FMLA for up to 10 additional weeks if they're caring for someone. That they would be able to use their personal sick leave during that time, or they can take it, it might be unpaid, but the first 2 weeks of the FMLA would use the emergency paid sick leave that is provided. So
Okay.
that could run concurrently.
Okay. Yeah, I just happened to think about,
Absolutely, because they're taking a risk by coming to school.
That's
right.
right. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We had a couple of other questions that came in through the chat box for people who are out there in the world. So let's make sure that we answer those. Can we do distance learning all year? And the answer to that is absolutely. We're asking them to commit, for at least the first semester. We have had lengthy discussions, and Ms. Bell is going to participate in a statewide meeting tomorrow about pre-K. We feel like that it's really difficult to do a pre-K experience virtually, that pre-K is one of those that it's all about the socialization. So we're committed to, if a child or a family feels for some reason their pre-K child cannot come, then we will help to provide resources for things that they can do at home, but we are not going to necessarily plan to provide a virtual pre-K. We just simply don't feel like we can commit to it being the quality that it needs to be. So we will not be doing that. And then will the county offer computers for those students who choose distance? Absolutely. If they're a student who's enrolled in our district, then they will definitely be issued a Google Chromebook. So I hope that answers most of the questions that we have coming in through the chat. So,
and Dr. Howard, we're monitoring that and trying to provide answers as quickly as we can is in there. But for those that are on the YouTube versus or on the Google versus the YouTube, I think every once in a while it might be beneficial to refer back to those, but we'll keep you posted throughout the course of the meeting.
Excellent. Thank you. So we yes.
I'm sorry, there is one question that you might want to address along with it. It goes along with what happens if someone tests positive in the school. The question is, if the children are in a single household, would every class that those children are in be closed down for 2 weeks? That's not necessarily the case.
Right.
And we're going to have to look at each of those cases on a case-by-case basis.
Right. Thank you.
There's also a question.
What is it?
In the case that someone shows symptoms and they get tested, what happens if the test results take 3 to 10 days to get back? What would the protocol?
That's a good question.
Yeah. Well, we'll follow the guidance that they give us, and the guidance tells us that we hold them out until we get clarity, until they're clear.
Clearance.
Mm-hmm. So, very good questions, though. All right, and so we talked about the start date. We'll talk about the calendar in just a minute. We talked about the instructional delivery models. The reason we wanted to really make sure that our parents understood, and I appreciate the questions that you asked, is because we are going to ask them to commit again, and we wanted to make sure they understood what they were committing to. So hopefully the guidance that Mr. Nicholson and his team have provided, we're going to send out that next, with your blessing, if this is acceptable to you all, for the next week, give people an opportunity to say, okay, this is what I want my child to do. And we've had people ask, can I have one child do this and one child? Absolutely. If you have 6 children, you may have 3 different models going on, or 2 different models going on. Safety enhancements. We would like to talk about this a little bit. I'd already shared with you, and I also shared at the Zoom meeting, the frequently asked questions that have come up about what we're going to do. So let's just talk through some of those very quickly, and you can also see them on our webpage, and they're posted on social media. But the key topics are, will we socially distance? And the thing that we shared on Tuesday night that I think is really important is, we will socially distance to the greatest of our ability, but we cannot guarantee that we'll be able to keep children 6 feet away from each other. So being honest with our parents is one of the things we want to do before we ask them to register for either a face-to-face or a remote experience, a distance learning experience. We're going to, you guys know, we're 355 square mile district, so we can't run buses with only 11 students on them. We'd never get kids to school. So if parents choose to put their children on a bus, we're going to have assigned seats. We're going to ask kids to space out. I mean, we'll assign them and space them out, but we still may have 30 to 40 kids on a bus. So they're not going to be officially socially distanced. Same thing in our school nutrition line. We will have a grab and go, and we will stagger lunches, and we won't have all the kids eat in the lunchroom. So we will spread them out as much as possible, and we're going to have kids eat in their classrooms and spread out. So we're going to implement it to the greatest extent possible, but I wouldn't want a parent feeling like they were receiving a guarantee that their children were going to be 6 feet away from somebody all day long. That's just not feasible. We've also purchased plexiglass for the front offices, so all of our front office very much like what you saw up front. And we have ordered the steps, the little feet, that show how 6 feet apart are. So we've got that to mark and guide. We also have principals working on traffic patterns so that we're not all going which ways. So there are a lot of efforts going into honor social distancing to the greatest extent we can, but we can't guarantee it. The big question that many probably have is we're wearing masks. And so we are expecting that our teachers will wear masks. We're also encouraging and expecting that our students wear masks when they're not socially distanced. So if they are going to transition and there's going to be children in the hall on both sides of the hallway, we're going to encourage kids to wear masks. Now, the elementary school is really a little bit more challenging, quite frankly, than middle and high school. And so in meeting with both our teachers yesterday and our principals today, we feel like it's reasonable to expect, especially at the high school when they're in transition, that we ask them to wear masks for their safety. But the most important part of that has to do with educating them on why. And quite honestly, we're not going to create a battleground. We're going to encourage it. We're going to expect it, but we're not going to police and be punitive if children don't. So we're going to try really hard to help children and adults understand why it's important. And we've talked about, to be very candid with you, we feel like it's probably a good idea that using some of the CARES funds, we buy Eagle and Panther masks that we give to kids so that we don't have to get into what color mask or what kind of mask, that we just, if you then here's a Panther mask, here's an Eagle mask, especially at the high school level. So we'd like to ask your thoughts on that. There's obviously a political hot potato in the whole concept of wearing masks. I think there's plenty of research that says there is value in doing so. But I also know that there are some families that are adamantly opposed to it. And so we're recommending and expecting that folks will do that out of courtesy and protection, but we're not going to police it per se. So I welcome your feedback on that. And any of the other staff members, either online or in the room, if you've got any other thoughts. But what is the board's stance on that?
Well, I was thinking about how we're going to transition high school students in the hallways, especially at Jackson County High School, where we have so many students right now. We do it both, but especially there.
And
So-
they don't have the space.
Yeah,
That's
they
the
don't have-
problem.
And they don't have the space. Yeah.
You gotta go through
Yeah.
those fires.
And so I mean, I'm all in favor, and I was hoping we could provide masks for them. So I'm all in favor of us doing that
Okay.
and encouraging that. I mean, I agree with what you said. Safety is our first priority
It is.
here.
It is. And I think we are giving families a choice that they could stay home. But I also want them to feel like it's a safe environment if they choose to come to school.
Yes,
And
and I know
so-
the kids want to come back.
They do.
Yeah.
They do. And, we'll have some, and I recognize that we'll have some that are just not going to do it. And I will handle those on an individual basis, but I don't think that is a punitive or something that we want to engage in a power struggle. I think we just encourage it because it's the safe thing to do.
Yeah.
And then we'll take it one day at a time. So if we have your blessing on that, then we'll use some of those CARES funds to go ahead and purchase Eagle and Panther masks for our middle and high school folks. And
Cloth reusable?
Yes, sir.
masks?
yeah, that they can wash and reuse
Yeah,
and so
yeah.
forth.
That'd be good too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good.
All right. And so, Mr. Clarsey, you already kind of referenced this, the response to illness, which is the second page of the plan that we have here. And again, this was dated June 13th, and we heard today that there may be some additional guidance coming out, and we'll just pivot as we need to. We've been pivoting on a daily basis for 4 months, so we'll just continue to respond. But this is where we are now. We are working to make sure that every school has an area that's respectful, but is a quarantine area, so that if a child, the thing that's kind of strange is people are really worried about that. But if a child is showing symptoms, we've always removed them from the setting. So we're just
Sure.
going to continue to do that. And you don't know if it's COVID for a while. So you just,
Right.
I think this year we'll probably assume that the child might be a risk to themselves or others. And so we'll take extra precautions there. So that is the general plan that we have to share with you. I would like to go ahead, if we could, and jump down to the calendar and talk just a little bit about the calendar and see what your thoughts are. We had originally hoped to delay the start to August the 12th and be able to keep the October break. But there's really no feasible way to get enough days in first semester and keep the winter break, the Thanksgiving break, the October break. You just can't do it. So, and we do have some high school classes that are semester classes like economics, and we need to provide those students and teachers enough days first semester. So the thing that this is just a draft, and that's why it says draft on it. I'd like to point out just a couple of things to you for the board to consider. This is a 190-day calendar for our teachers. So there's no furlough days, and we are paying them, what they've been getting paid. This is a 175-day calendar for students, and we were looking at a 178-day calendar for students. We've added in 3 additional planning days for teachers with the expectation that we really get to a robust remote learning, Canvas building, distance learning plan. You'll notice that there are 8 days for pre-planning, and that's a lot. That's not something we've ever done before. And to be very candid with you, with your blessing, the 31st is kind of on paper only. We had already scheduled some 7 Mindsets training. Do you remember that's the SEL? And that's scheduled for Monday, the 27th and the 28th. So we're basically saying, teachers, we already had this scheduled. We need you to come in on the 27th or 28th. Technically on the calendar, it's the 31st, but there is a day during the last week that we need you to come. The rest of it really begins on August the 3rd. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we want to pay them for their time. We put it on the calendar as the 31st, but it's really, they will have a training one day that week, and that's a 7 Mindsets training and some other training. So Todd, I don't know if there's anything else you want to speak to in terms of professional learning on this calendar.
Nothing other than the fact that we are revising the plan that we had in place, and we will pivot. We're flexible. So we'll make it happen. As you mentioned, 7 Mindsets, and I apologize, Dr. Howard, I'm answering questions on YouTube as well. But so if I say something you already said, just cut me off. But we did try to change a few things. If it's anything in-house, we are absolutely 100% flexible. We can change, but we do have several schools that are kicking off 7 Mindsets that you mentioned, and they're not available until actually towards the end of September. So we'll keep those dates, but those are only an hour and a half, and we can comp that time out, as you mentioned, with teachers. So flexibility is the key ingredient to success moving forward this year.
Okay, great. What were you going to ask, Ms. Wheeler?
Well, the 7 Mindsets, is that going to be at each school? It's going to be done. It's not going to be
It's not a whole group. It's
system-wide.
individual.
Okay.
Mhm, individual schools.
And that's above the 190 days. That's
No, sir, that's included. It's included.
okay. So we're not adding days to that.
No, sir.
Okay.
We basically put that 31st as a professional learning day or a
Yes.
work day, but it's really a flex day because some will do it. If they come to work all day on the 27th, then they don't have to come on the 31st. That's just one day that week,
Yes.
but we just floated it on the 31st. So the other things that I would just point out very quickly is the first semester is a little bit shorter. It has a fewer days, like 83 days, I think it is. And there are a few more second semester, but that's the best that we could do. And our principals have seen this, our teachers have seen this, and they understand and feel like what we're trying to achieve is the right thing. The other piece that's kind of exciting, if we have families that had already planned an October break, there's only 2 student days there. And if we needed to use remote or use some flexibility there, I think that that's something that we should honor because this is a weird situation. And so they still have the potential of a 5-day weekend there, or if they already had family plans, we can work with the parents that the 12th and 13th if there's an issue there. So that would be my recommendation. And this gives us the similar breaks that we've had in years past. It does push our end of the year to the Friday before Memorial Day. And I would imagine that our high schools we'll talk with our high schools about adjusting graduation to meet their needs. But we will ask if you will carefully think about this calendar, and we would like to have it approved Monday. If you get feedback and are in support of the calendar, we feel like this is the best way to go. One of the questions that has come up is, what if the governor extends the state of emergency? If the governor extends the state of emergency, we're going to have to come back to you and say, okay, we're either going to have to start remotely, or we're going to have to go to an extremely modified approach, in that we bring in half our kids for 2 days, take a break, and bring the other half in for 2 days. So I don't think that we could come back full scale in a normal fashion if the governor still has us under state of emergency, but we won't know that until the time comes. So we're planning to come back August 12th as normal as we can, as under the guidelines that we have in place. So
Now, with your meetings that you had yesterday with
Yes, ma'am.
middle and high school, and I guess elementary maybe too,
right.
are they aware of this calendar?
We shared a draft of the calendar with them, and we got feedback from them. The one thing that was different is we met with elementary in the morning and then high school in the afternoon. Or it's not in the afternoon, they were both in the afternoon, but elementary was first and then high school.
Yeah.
When we met with the elementary and the high school, we had the full October break. And so when we went back and talked to high school and the high school principals and looking at counting days, they really felt like we couldn't afford to do the whole week.
Yeah.
So we added those 2 days. It's really 3 days because the 9th was a planning day.
Yeah.
So they've not seen the modified version,
Yeah.
but the teachers, I have to tell you, it just speaks volumes to the quality of our teachers. They were so responsive and so supportive of what we're trying to achieve. And I trust that they understand what we're trying to do. So
I was just curious to know if
they had seen, yes,
Yeah.
we shared it, the modified version and the start date and the plan. So the other two are items under superintendent's comments are not really quite as robust. One is just a reminder that we have a training plan, and prayerfully we'll, I don't know why that didn't link, Amanda, the training plan that for the board. And so we'll continue to have our trainings in the fall and in the spring, and continue to get guidance from GSBA and what the expectations are. So we've just linked that in there for your benefit. And then the strategic waiver. This is kind of a big deal. The board, the state board has waived the CCRPI for this year, obviously. And there's feedback sessions going on right now for whether or not they waive some of the assessments for next year. We're in just a strange place. That's all that anybody can say. So we were offered the opportunity to go ahead and apply for an amendment to our strategic waiver. So we engaged in our strategic waiver in 2015, and we are a school system that has elected flexibility. And so basically this is asking you all to approve that we continue flexibility with Title 20. We have added a couple of things, like we had not, in our first amendment, we had not asked for all of the waivers, but we're going ahead this time and asking to waive anything that we can waive, just because it provides flexibility for us. Seat time, calendar, program offerings, and honestly, I'm certain that most districts will waive all of the Title 20 if they can. So this would be another action item on Monday if you're in support of it. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to give me a call. But that's somewhat of a formality. That's something we need to do every July. If you approve it Monday, then we'll send it to the state board, and it will be for consideration of their approval at the August state board meeting. So those are all of the items that I have, and that really covers most of our return to school plan and the things that we're doing. And if you have questions that continue to come up, please don't hesitate to pass those to us. We're happy to do that. Todd sent me something here. It says, did I hear correct that if more difficult for a student to transition from in-class to virtual than transitioning? Todd, I'm going to ask you do you want me to respond to that publicly, or did you?
That wasn't me, Dr. Howard.
Oh, okay.
Unless it's a different Todd. I'm still responding on YouTube, so I have not texted you anything.
Okay. All right. Very good. So let's go to the next item, unless the board has any other questions on calendar, the board training plan, or the reopening of school plan. Any other questions? Before I turn it over to Mr. Patton and Mr. Gilbert, can I just say that I know that Tuesday was a point of frustration for our community, and I again apologize that, but I do not want it to go unrecognized that the staff has worked feverishly to try to do the right things on behalf of kids and families. And it was a little disheartening to see some of the negative feedback. I respect how people feel, but I really hope that folks understand that this team is working really hard on behalf of kids. And so thank you again for your patience, and we'll continue to try to improve. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Patton and to Mr. Gilbert and your teams.
Thank you, Dr. Howard. I'll start out just for a moment. The first item on the list is facilities use discussion. And the question here really, it boils down to what was said earlier. We need to keep our students and our staff as safe as possible. And one of those ways we can do it is to eliminate any outside possibilities of further connection with COVID-19 or any other virus. So our thought here is let's close, at least for the first semester, outside use of our facilities, other than where we have an intergovernmental agreement. Those probably will go on under a scheduled basis, but ensuring that for outside users that have used our facilities for a long time, but want to come in on a weekend or a night and bring in crowds, it's just very difficult to do that and for us to be ready for school the next day. So our question to the board really is to ensure that we have consensus from you as we begin to implement that for the coming year. There will always be the exceptions that involve our students and can be extremely well-planned events that make sense. And that will happen, I'm sure. But with every exception that we approve, then there'll be other groups or individuals that want to use our spaces. And so we want to limit that as much as possible. I'd love the board to weigh in on that a bit and let us know what your thinking is.
I think that'd be very smart for us to limit that. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's unfortunate, but we're just there.
So what about parents that come in to help in classrooms and help with stuff like that as well?
So we do have a protocol for visitors, and that they'll go through the temperature check, the list of questions. And so we're going to limit visitors. We're really going to discourage that. We're also going to limit, this is something we probably need to put on the table when kids arrive at school, having them walk down the hall. We just really can't do that. They're not going to be able to escort children to class. We just can't have that. But this is more like outside clubs that request to use our facilities on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday for, an event or training. To just be very honest, we have certain athletic groups that are not a part of the rec department. They're separate clubs that have completed facilities use form. And in years past, we've certainly, invited them to use our facilities. But we'd really like the board to weigh in on this because we do feel strongly that if we've got, 100 folks in the gym on a day before students return to school, it's going to be very hard to ensure that we've been able to disinfect and clean. So,
If I understand this correctly, like Sunday nights, there's a club volleyball group that is rented and paid for the gym here at Jackson County High School. So by doing this, we would eliminate a group similar to that.
right.
We're not eliminating the intergovernmental agreements that we have with the county rec department.
Right.
Those are the intergovernmental agreements I think we referred to.
Right.
So they can still use it. What about, and this may have fallen into the category that Mr. Gilbert was talking about, exceptions, but there are some teams that are totally kids from that school that are in that gym every day. And if their team was practicing or needed to practice, would we allow a team that was made up of totally kids from that school to practice in that gym that evening?
Most of those, I would assume, are rec department or they're not.
There's some feeder teams that
Like
may
travel
not-
teams,
Yeah,
The Jackson County Basket, I know you, but I'm not.
basketball.
Those guys are using, yeah, I'm not talking about you, but I
Yeah, I
know
know.
the boys team,
Yeah.
Bushing them are using as well, so.
right.
That's why we brought it up. I think,
Yeah.
we're going to have to be, we're going to have to be careful picking and choosing. And so we will support what you guys live in the community. You guys represent the community. Our recommendation is that we limit that and that we make sure that we protect the disinfecting and sanitization of the spaces that kids are going to be using and sharing. But if you feel like, and I mean, I get it. I mean, there are kids so I'm not just the thing that is concerning is while it is our kids and they use it during the day, what we normally observe is that there are people that bring them there, and then there's their parents, and then there's their parents' little kids, and then there's the friends, and so it's not just those athletes that end up accessing the facility, and then you open up a whole lot more exposure.
Well, and then we've got to have time to clean
Disinfect.
that
That's right.
and prepare for the next day for our students.
How do we regulate model to say coaches and kids only?
Do what, Mike?
Coaches and kids only. Parents are going to have to sit in the car.
Well, that's the way we're going to handle it during the day. I mean, we're not going to let parents in during the day.
During the day, yeah.
Use that same.
Yeah.
That's the
Then,
challenge.
yeah.
That's the challenge.
And see, the coaches for them would not be employed by our school system, correct?
Right.
It's a double-edged sword because you really want low sense of normalcy for some kids being able to come back and go to play sports and practice. That would be a little.
Which would be nice if we
Which would be
could, but
nice
I
if
just
you
don't
could.
know if that's going to be realistic.
But how do you monitor it?
Yeah.
And if we do
Yeah.
it for one, then we have to do it for
Yeah.
others.
Yeah.
Understand and until we know more about this disease and what's going on.
Yeah.
We need to stick with it.
And what if all the players were ours except one, I mean, I don't know that would be the case, but I mean, do we know for sure that they're going to only be our students?
Volleyball and basketball. And then the wrestling groups are not associated with the rec department, they're associated with the school. So as you get closer to that season, I'm sure that's, so now it's volleyball.
Whole new ball game about that season.
Yeah.
Volleyball going on now.
Almost
Starts
going now.
yeah, and the month of August will be here before we know it. And
I think the other thing we do is we carefully, as we're going to do for school anyway, is monitor current health situation, what's going on in Jackson County, and it could sway, I think, how open we might be to an exception versus maybe saying absolutely no. But that's going to be very similar to everything we've got to monitor over the next few months.
I'm okay. I'll say this. I'm okay with outside groups. I'm okay with as much as I hate a church or, a group like that. I'm okay eliminating that and eliminating the outside club groups and all of that. Maybe we can give this some more thought and discussion as we kind of go forward and we get a little closer and say no, but say we're willing to, have a discussion about it. I struggle.
Maybe get a little more information about it before we make a definite, and depending on how this goes, the virus may take care of all of this for us. It may not allow any of it,
I'm okay with those groups because I think those are smaller groups. I'm more okay with those small groups than the rec because they always leave a mess. And I'm afraid to say that.
I understand.
It's just-
I know. And you have a lot more people.
And
You just have
you have more people.
I know.
That's why I asked about the visitors.
Mm-hmm. Right.
If we're not allowing visitors in the schools, why are we allowing visitors in the schools?
Mhm.
That's my question.
Right. I know, which is why we brought this topic
Right.
4th. The one caveat is not allowing visitors in the school is to limit exposure to students. When
Right.
when there are no students there, then we're more concerned with the contamination of the equipment, and when there's just not enough definitive. Yeah,
Which benefits the students.
that's
So-
true. That's true.
So that's,
Yeah,
I mean,
so.
it's- I like the idea. I think that it's important for those kids to have that outlet. So especially during this time where you're cooped up inside some of these neighborhoods, you know, and so I think it is something we need to talk about. I do.
So Ted, what I think I hear is saying is that yes, we all support limiting access and not opening it up. But if I'm hearing you correctly, if it involves a lot of our students, that we evaluate the present status of health in Jackson County, and we will have the board weigh in on that, whether or not we want to allow those particular groups.
Sounds good to me, and we can ask the adults involved to provide their plan.
Okay,
Yes.
excellent. We'll ask them to provide a
That's a
plan.
good point, is
Yeah.
they would have to provide us with a plan.
Okay, very good. Thank you. All right. What else, Mr. Gilbert?
I'll go very quickly because I think I'm getting feedback on the mic here for some reason, but monthly projects report, the same one that you get every month is in there. I did send a mid-month report as requested, and we'll continue to do that just to keep everybody up to speed on our projects. Mr. Patton, or if you're there, do you have anything to add at this point on projects?
I don't, other than everything's just really going well. The air conditioning projects, I will tell everybody, everything's running. So we have almost 100% now on air conditioned gyms, which is pretty exciting. Those will be finishing up, and the high school is going very well, and power's changing every day. So everything's going very well.
Thank you, sir. And then, and I would encourage you to go through the report. There's a lot of great photos in there, as you're seeing on the screen. And I love it. You got to keep up with it. It's running really fast.
Ted,
Yeah.
we have
Yes.
a question. We have a question for you, or Josh, or whoever.
Yep, either one. So if we push the start date of school out to the 12th, what does that do to the renovation project at the high school? Does that help you? Does that hurt, or makes no difference?
We aren't going to slow down on the high school on any of them, but it obviously helps a little bit. Josh?
I'll say it certainly helps. I don't think it's enough time to finish the other areas, but it definitely gets us a whole lot closer. I think the date will be moved up a lot from having those extra days.
It's exciting. The picture that I have up now in the last meeting we had with the team was fun hearing about the demolition of the skylight. That was quite a project, wasn't it, Josh?
It was, yeah.
But it's gone.
It's more than anybody thought it would be, actually.
Yeah. So, all right, very good. I don't know if David joined us, but we did want to give a.
He did.
Okay, great. And I don't know if we want to go through this whole presentation, but I did want to at least make the board aware of something that we're working on. Oh, why did I get that? Somehow, for some reason, I'm not uploading correctly or something, Amanda. That's David, you want to speak to Pick My Kid?
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Howard. So in lieu of our conversations that we had about distancing children, one of the things that we looked at was the dismissal process for car riders and also for buses. And typically for car riders and walk-in students, you congregate in a common area. So what we look for and discussed with the principals is coming up with or finding something that could accommodate keeping children either in their classrooms or limiting that congregation. Pick My Kid is something that we've looked at, had a great demo 2 days ago, and it allows us, as you see in the slides, and I'll go through them quickly, one of the great benefits is it is a free app for our parents. It is a cost to the district, but for our parents it is a free app, and it works on most mobile devices. But you can see from the slides the dismissal changes are done pretty efficiently, and the teachers can see that on the dashboard. It allows for, if you've got a student that changes, then that can be updated quickly, and the teacher knows, okay, this student has changed from being a bus to a car rider or vice versa. Also, too, the great thing about it, and Dr. Howard, if we could go to that picture that shows where the geofence is. Once the car rider line forms, you'll see a little stop sign that says announce, and that geofence in the green circle. That allows when that parent pulls up, it comes up as you see the different names there. It automatically tells the people at the front that are bringing the children out, okay, this car is ready, so we get them in the queue. If they're in a certain part of the school, they can start transitioning up to be picked up. So it does allow for a more efficient way of doing it, and also allows for some more social distancing in that. One of the other things that I like about it too, from a bus standpoint, it gives the schools the ability to let parents know when buses are leaving, and if buses are doubled up, it allows that to be pushed out. So parents know if it's 3:15 and their buses leave at 3:30, they left on time. If not, they will be able to push out and say why they did not leave on time, and also making sure that they are on the way. It falls right in line with what we're doing with the COVID-19. It has a lot of different options. They're included. It's not necessarily say that we have to use those options, but they are included. The centralized dismissal, as we talked about, the limiting of non-essential visitors, the tracking of the health. So if you have a child that comes in and they're not feeling well and they're sent to the nurse's office, then the teacher can be notified, and it allows that teacher to see, okay, I'll use my name, David, for example, is not making it to class. He's being held, and parents are being called. And that is coming from the classroom. That's critical for a teacher to know where their students are, and then at the end of the day to know if there's any bus changes or car rider changes or any pickups. The thing I like about it too is it matches a picture to the child to ensure that the right person is picking that child up. So that's another advantage. Everything that we've seen thus far on it, I will say that East Jackson Elementary is using a portion of it, and they talk very highly of it. And several of the other principals have expressed great interest in doing that. So we're looking at it for our 10 schools. Even a reunification part that was very impressive to me was the fact that if we do have to reunify for any reason, then it allows the parents, here again, to be pushed out through that app to know where the reunification point pickup is. And when that parent gets there, it has to match that child. So all those little checks and balances in place make sure that we ensure student safety. And as you see here, and if you go through the slides, it does talk about a COVID-19 ready platform, and it is COVID compliant for the parent app. So any questions, comments?
Okay, sorry.
Just a real quick comment that like many of these apps and software programs, there's lots and lots of features, but the real push on this one, if you went back to the aerial, you'd see it's Gum Springs Elementary, and dismissal is a congregation of students in a very small space up in the lobby, in the atrium, and the cafeteria area. And that's nothing wrong with that. That's what we do in most of our schools. But the impetus on this, to think about it, was how do we keep our kids social distanced? If we decide to use other features of it, that's great, but that's the main one that we wanted, is some way to keep the kids in our classroom and get them to the car without congregation.
And Mr. Gilbert, it does allow, I believe, for more efficiency in that, because right now most schools use the radio system or have their own radios that they use. And that geofence being put at the front, as you see in that green circle, allows the teachers to go ahead and get that student ready in that transition period that takes so long to see the sign that we use now, call on the radio. That eliminates all that. So
yeah, I think it's excellent.
It is a good good product, and I think it will benefit our schools.
Mr. Clarsey has a question.
Yes, sir. I'm sorry.
As it operates today, I show up at any time during that period to drop my child off. I drive and I let them out. This doesn't change that. Looks like it's modifying the pickup. So on the pickup side, I drive, I get in the line, and there's staff that's with the radio clipboard. I hang a little sign on the mirror. So this is basically eliminating that. They keep little Johnny in the classroom until I hit the green zone, and Johnny goes out the front door.
His name pops up on the screen in the classroom, says it's your turn to go. Johnny walks up, and by the time Johnny gets to the front, there's somebody there to meet him, and you show them your phone, has Johnny's number, and then Johnny gets in the car.
So if I can't go and I send my neighbor, what do they do?
It says you can add people.
You can add people, and you just do it through the app. You just text them or what, and it will
I'm supposed
change.
to giving them my mirror hanger, and now they got
Then you got to meet them somewhere at the Publix and get it to them somehow or whatever.
It makes sure that you're approved, or whoever you send is approved to pick up that child. And so that's the safety enhancement part. As far as the other personnel, then it could allow principals the luxury of using those personnel for other duties and responsibilities in the afternoon and in the morning.
Will this discourage the people that like to arrive 2 hours before school release?
Well, probably
Probably not.
Actually, probably not. But
Yeah.
it could, but I would say probably not, but it could.
All right, David, thank you so much. The great thing about this is, as David had mentioned, that one of our schools is already using the free version of it. If we upgrade this, we can do this for all 10 of our schools for less than $30,000. And we have our, does that sound like a lot?
I gulped a little bit.
I saw that. It's about $2,900 per school for us to improve the efficiency, increase the safety that much.
Yeah.
That's pretty reasonable. I mean,
Yeah, when you break it down per school, it doesn't sound quite so bad.
If I could just add, the board, there is a lot of positive feedback in the comments on the YouTube live stream.
Oh, okay. About the app?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it will. As already stated, we started looking at this because we didn't want gangs of kids sitting in the front office, but I think it'll offer a lot of benefit, much more efficient.
So that buys the software. Is there any hardware that needs to be bought for the school?
No.
Okay.
Our teachers all have, computers in their classrooms, and they have, so it'll be.
So is this a one-time purchase, or is this
It's an annual.
annual?
It would be an annual subscription. It's the fee for the app.
So if we throw it in the corner after a couple months, then we just don't renew next year?
Right. And hopefully we won't throw it in the corner. I mean, East Jackson's been using it for a couple of years, and they are dependent on it. She speaks very highly of it. And they have a long pickup line, goes all the way, snakes way back, as you know. So, but it's very efficient. I mean, they dismiss in about 10 minutes.
So
So.
at East
Elementary.
Yeah.
And Dr. Howard, West Jackson Middle School, and I know Gum Springs Elementary Schools have also looked at it.
Yes.
And they are definitely interested in
They're
it.
going to, if we don't buy it for them, they're going to buy it on their own anyway. So we're waiting to hear back from our principals. I mean, our high schools, it's a different issue. So it may not be something that we need at the high school level, but it does help to have that elementary for sure. So, all right. Thank you so much, David. We appreciate that, research, and we'll keep following up. So we still have several items to go over, so I'm going to turn it over to Anna, who is here with us tonight. Thank you for being here, and with some really, really good news on the financial front.
Yes, I'm so glad that I get to give the good news, because all the others are very interesting. But I don't have to provide feedback on that. I'm glad we get to show good numbers. So SPLOST, hope and pray is a telltale sign of the actual state of our state's economy, because this is one of the highest SPLOST receipts we've ever gotten.
It is just.
And
I know.
it actually caused our 12-month average to go up over $700,000 for the first time.
Wow.
So it's amazing news. It's great. I feel like it's kind of a sign of things that we can expect, and hopefully there's not as huge of an impact on our economy and our state revenues as what was initially projected. So that was a great thing to see this month. And of course, we have finished one fiscal year, and the financials that I'm presenting tonight are interim because there are still, there's still some final check runs that we have to do as some of the final invoices come in for last fiscal year, and those, of course, haven't been processed yet. But there's some other postings that we have to do, and so I will, once it's all finished and finalized and everything's been posted, then I'll present final financials for fiscal year 20. But right now at this point, we have ended the year at almost $18 million in fund balance. We're 17.8 right now, and with the few things that we have left to post, it's going to be very minimal change per day. So I feel pretty good that this is about where we expect to end for the fiscal year, which is a great place for us to be starting for next fiscal year. And as you can see, if you want to look at the comparison of our fund balances, you can see that we are ending almost, 4.3 million over where we ended last year. So that is almost offsetting the amounts that we are being reduced in fiscal year 21 for state funding. So it's a great thing, and I'm extremely grateful and appreciative that everybody's been so supportive and worked so hard to get us to this point, because it's also put us in a position where we are not having to consider furlough days for any staff members, which is huge.
Wonderful.
So with that being, you have a question?
Yes, but
No, go ahead.
So what, the pro rata share, what is that?
It's the, basically the tax receipts, they can't determine who it goes to.
Okay.
Like what it was related to, so they prorate it to all collectors, basically in the state. So, yeah. But talking about fund balance and budget fiscal year 21, we got our allotment sheet beginning this week, end of last week actually. And so we have been able to update and present you with a tentative budget for fiscal year 21 for you to review and for your consideration. Right now it's our property tax is based on a 5% increase. Of course, we still haven't received anything as far as a final consolidation sheet or digest, but that's pretty conservative estimate for our property taxes. And then included in that is what we now know is our state funding reduction, which is about $4.6 million. So with the initiatives that we all agreed on and discussed, and the things that we've done to prepare for this, and some of the things that we've absorbed or tried to reduce cost on, we initially, when we presented the budget, we were looking at using about $2.5 million of fund balance. And right now, with an extremely conservative estimate for a midterm allotment, we could possibly use around $2 million. Worst case scenario of fund balance, and that's no furlough days and all of the state revenue reductions that have been presented.
It's pretty amazing, to be honest.
It is.
And one of the things that when we talk to principals and to just be very candid with all of our stakeholders, that the question probably comes to people's heads, well, then why did you do some of the things that you did? Why did you contract and why did you absorb some positions? And honestly, we did that and don't regret doing it, because I think that this is a really good place to be, but we're still using $2 million of fund balance, and we don't know what next year might look like from a state funding position. So
Next year's one is
Yeah, but two, if you look at the fact that we're starting or projecting to start the year with about 17.5 plus in fund balance, if we use it, again, worst case scenario, 2 million of that, we still will end next year with over $15.5 million in fund balance, which is great. That still puts us in a great position if we have to, again, address a significant funding cut, that we have that cushion there to be able to do so.
And many of the things that we had talked about earlier, I mean, you still have she's got some notes there on page 2 that I would make sure you pay attention to, because this includes the additional trailers that we've had to put at North Jackson and at West Middle and at Jackson County High School, and all of those things are included in your tentative budget. So that's good. All right, good news there.
But anyway, that's there for your review. We would. I mean, I'm available anytime if you want to email or anything, or call me if you have additional questions, because we would really like for you to consider approving this tentative budget Monday so that we can move forward with our normal operations and we don't have to continue to bring you spending resolutions to operate month by month.
Yeah.
So if you'll just let us know by tomorrow or by Monday, whether or not this is acceptable, because if it's not, then we will need to bring a spending resolution for the month of August to you. So, all right, thank you.
So we kind of went through this
Back in March when we've had the first.
Came
Yes, sir.
together. So is there much change from all that? I mean,
honestly, the biggest change is taking out the anticipated raise that the governor was going to give, which we thought that was the talk back in March when I presented those numbers. So the numbers have decreased pretty significantly because we don't have to account for the $2,000 raise for teachers and the 2 to 5% raise for all other positions. So that's out, and then all the other things were items that we brought to you for your approval as far as absorbing positions and transferring from within.
And so, my it's going to be. I'll probably be calling you a good bit, Anna, because for the budget, for me to be able to approve. I'm going to have to be able to digest it and understand it. So,
absolutely.
So again, I believe we're supposed to be good stewards of our taxpayers' money, and so I appreciate your time in the future, Anna.
Absolutely.
Because I'd like to see the differences and understand.
Okay.
So, thank you.
And if you can tell us what you think you'd like to see, that might help too, because we can prepare. I mean, maybe, so this is on the left-hand side is FY20, which was this year. Would it be helpful to see the original budget that we presented compared to this budget? Is that what I hear you saying potentially? Because we talked through at length the first budget at the retreat. Right. So the biggest difference, as she said, is that revenue from the state. And then the second big change is the expenditures on the instructional side because of the staff absorption and the reduction in raises. Outside of that, most everything else is constant.
And if you,
so that's all I'm saying is, given it on Thursday and then you want me to vote on Monday, sometimes that's a short window.
That's not a norm either. You're exactly right.
To fully understand,
Sure,
and
absolutely.
You're correct. That's not normal operations at all. It's just more due to the, when we receive the state funding information.
And I understand that, but I just want to be forthcoming with you guys and saying, before I can prove anything like this, I'm going to have to be able to fully digest it.
Right. Well, I do want to mention that from even in the budget we presented and went through in depth in March, we were actually dipping into fund balance almost $1 million.
Right.
And now we've lost $4.6 million in state funds, but we're only
Another
dipping
million.
into it about
Sure.
another million from where we had started from. And that again is an effort and an initiative to preserve staff and teachers' salaries.
Yes.
I mean, that we can always, I mean,
Right.
I would not recommend it, as far as furlough days, we can always consider it.
No, I do not want to furlough any teachers, no matter what. I won't mess with their period.
So I think I kind of know where you're going, but if I don't, you just chime in. So if I understand the process, this is our tentative budget. So as we go forward, we still have to finalize the digest. Once we get the final digest number, we'll set the millage, and then that'll take our local dollars. That'll set it. So between now and then, I guess maybe what you might be concerned about is we give a tentative budget, how many horses are getting out of the barn before we get to finalize it.
Well, yes, and again, this is a tentative, because we actually, once we get the digest, then I will present a final budget based on all the known revenue sources at that point. And,
We'll have to have hearings as well.
yeah, and we have hearings, millage rate hearings and budget hearings at that point.
And that's what I'm,
Yeah.
millage is
Yeah,
the big thing.
Right, and this is based on not
Yes.
doing any adjustment,
Yes.
any increase to the millage rate whatsoever. But also, again, if you look in there, I budgeted $1 million for a midterm adjustment.
I see
Well,
that.
year before last, it was 1.2. This past year, it was 2.1 million. So it could,
The midterm allotment?
midterm, yes.
Right.
So it
There
could
was $1
be,
million last year, and you want $1 million again this year, is what it says here.
right, that's just what I budgeted.
That's what the state
Okay,
sends to
that's
us,
what
is
the
it?
state says.
Yeah, I want to do it conservatively so that,
In case they give us one.
yeah, or,
More or less.
well, they do give us, I mean, they have.
They usually give us more than we
Like I
budget.
budgeted $1 million year before last, it was
Right.
1.2.
Right.
This past year, I again budgeted $1 million, but it was actually 2.1, which is part of what helped
With the
increase our fund
balance.
balance from the projected 13 million to 17 million.
And I appreciate that, because like I said before, the whole count your chickens before they hatch.
Right,
So anyway, but not to take any more time, but I'd like to,
absolutely.
because, it's,
So between now and October,
September.
or September, so what, other than just, normal operating expenditures, there's nothing in here that's a big expenditure that
That's not already been discussed.
That had already
In
been
addition,
discussed.
The fact that we knew M&O expenses were gonna increase significantly because we had to get more trailers and,
Yeah.
plus we've also got an increase in staff. Even though we absorbed some positions, we had to hire additional staff, but that also will come into play, with the midterm adjustment, because we have to forward fund some of those just to address the growth before the state calculates that in to what they send us.
I think the thing to kind of think about though is the millage is gonna just remain flat.
Yeah.
More than likely.
Yes.
So I kind of swallowed that one, gulped that with the
I know,
little
and
jar,
that's
but,
that's one thing that I would like to see us whittle down some more eventually.
And if it hadn't been for the state
yeah.
funding cuts, that,
Sure.
I mean, I said that I would like to reduce it and get it,
Well, and the reality
Every
is,
year
if,
we
if
do.
there's 7 or 8% growth, then
Yeah.
there may be a small rollback available.
Yeah.
We'll just have to see what we just don't know.
Yeah.
but I mean, for the last 3 years, we haven't.
We have
But
rolled
then
back.
Incrementally rolled it back.
Rollback rate,
Yeah.
we've usually tried to
Good.
halfway.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right.
Be halfway
Yeah.
and roll it back, each year.
There's nobody that wants to see a rollback more than me, I can assure you that. But I've kind of accepted that it needs to be flat, because Michael just said a second ago, we are a little concerned about what QB funding is gonna look like next year.
Next
year.
Yeah.
Hopefully we can, our economy can come back and we can plan out. I think the thing that we have seen is housing in Jackson County is not really slowed down per se, so we have to still be kind of cognizant of that, I think. So, I appreciate your interest in wanting to ask questions. I've kind of accepted the flat millage and.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'd like to, just want to see. So, but, yeah.
Great questions, and we want you to be. And your point is very well taken, that we try really hard not to give you something on Thursday and ask you to do it on Monday. And I think that's your concern, and rightfully so. We can always do a spending resolution if that's what you prefer.
If the board,
We just have to have one or the other.
the board is not, comfortable with it, if you're not comfortable after more question and answer, then we can present a spending resolution for August.
And it would be, just so that you know, it would just be 1/12 of the already approved budget from last year, so that we can have that ready to go pretty easily if you don't feel comfortable with this one. So, all right, thank you very much, Anna, and that's all good news, very good news. So, Dr. Blankenship.
Good evening, everybody. We do have a very short personnel recommendation list for you this evening, and we have a few personnel items that we'll discuss in executive session. But we have our salary schedules and supplement schedules attached here for you to review. And if you take a look at those, the certified teacher salary schedule is remaining the same, because we did not get the increase that the governor had proposed. So that is, there's no changes to that salary schedule from last year. So it remains the same. Then our non-teaching salary schedule is almost the same. There are two slight changes that we are recommending, and those are two grades. They're down towards the bottom of that first sheet, and we're just asking for a grade change on each of those positions to align it better with those similar positions and the salary
In other districts.
ranges in other districts. I think I've mentioned to you before that we get a salary study every year that really, it covers the entire state, but we pay very close attention to those districts that are near us and of like size. And this will actually, both of these positions were significantly below the average salary, and this helps us to be in line and to be competitive with those. So those are the only two changes that we're recommending this year on that salary schedule.
And I might mention the individuals that fall into those categories are long invested individuals in our district.
And have taken on additional more duties to avoid having to hire or needing to hire more staff.
And then the final one is our athletic and extracurricular supplement. And we work with our athletic directors and our principals on that. There are a few supplements on there that have been frozen that they are asking us to unfreeze. And Anna, can you remember any other significant changes on that?
Mm-mm.
I don't believe there were.
Just due to the growth, well, of course, student growth, then in turn turns into activity and growth in sports. And so there were just a couple of additional assistant positions for different sports that have grown significantly, that they asked for those assistant coaching positions to be unfrozen.
And I believe there were also some changes that were recommended due to equity considerations. So.
And they provide there the total for each grade band, what that amount is as well.
I'm sorry.
I was just pointing out that you're given the total per grade band too per school, so that they can see what the total supplement amount is.
do set a maximum
Right.
each year, basically based on, what the lowest could be and what the most of the supplements could be. And we usually try to find a middle ground there so that they have a little bit of room to award, but they're not just giving the maximum supplement to everybody.
All right.
The next item is our enrollment, and what we have for you is, as we always do at the beginning of the year, we try to provide you the ending enrollment from the previous year, and then what our July registration enrollment is right now. You can see that the total enrollment is roughly the same. There are some fluctuations amongst the schools. I would say that this is a very unique time, as we all know, and that is likely impacting our how we are receiving registrations. And so we may see those numbers change significantly over the next month as we get closer to school starting. So I would not want to conjecture right now what enrollment is going to be. But I think that, as you mentioned, Mr. Clearacy, housing doesn't seem to be slowing down. And I think that we are likely to see a significant increase at some of our schools. In fact, you can see Jackson County.
Jackson County High School is the
Mhm.
one that has me
Really?
very concerned.
Yeah.
Very concerned.
That is a significant increase of almost 150 students.
Yes.
So we'll be watching that very closely. That, as Dr. Howard mentioned quite a bit earlier, this is going to be the work over the next month and a half. It's really looking at those students that want to go to distance learning, how that impacts enrollment at the schools, not enrollment at the schools, but class sizes
Right.
at the schools, and the personnel that we need to assign and where, and then any incoming enrollment. And so, if we have a significant increase in enrollment, then we may actually have to look at
Hiring
additional
externally.
staff.
Mhm. May have absorbed all we can absorb.
So that is something certainly that will stay in close communication with you all. The next item is just an update. Every year I've tried to provide you with an update on our ESS partnership. And I've provided some information that's attached with the new hire information. I was saving space and put both items on the same document. So if you want to open up that document, Dr. Howard, there you go. And I'll talk about the new hire information first. We do have 65 certified teachers that are new to our district this year. 100% of them have completed our virtual onboarding. That's been a big success that we've celebrated within our HR department this year. Is they really talked about pivoting and being very creative and innovative and working with technologies, CatFlip in particular, to develop a virtual onboarding system within just weeks. And that has really, quite frankly, revolutionized how we have done some of our processes. And we're going to keep much of that in place going forward because it's been so efficient. We do miss the face-to-face contact, and so we're going to find a way to build that in, but it just may look differently going forward.
That's why all those bags are over there, right? We haven't gotten to see those people.
All those bags are right there because we are going, because we're having to readjust on how we do our new teacher orientation welcome. We'll be going out to the schools to meet with the new teachers, and we'll deliver your goodie bags. And we appreciate our business partners who so graciously provide some swag to give them and welcome them here. We do still have one position left to fill that we are trying desperately to fill internally. it is a 5th grade position at South Jackson. So we are still working through that process and hope to have a resolution on that next week. But to go back to the ESS partnership, I mainly want to highlight that this partnership has, while it took a minute to get off the ground, and we had to work through, as you do with any implementation, we had to work through some bumpy stretches of the road. It really has been a good partnership over the course of this year. And you can see from that chart, our fill rate prior to partnering with ESS was consistently in the 70% range. So we would end up with 30% of our sub positions going unfilled each day. And since that time, we've steadily increased, and now we are averaging around 93 to 95% each month with our fill rate, and that's just tremendous. I mean, that you just don't see that, and so that what that means is that eases the stress on our teachers in the building because they're not having to cover classes,
Right.
And it also takes some of the load off of our principals and front office staff for having to try to continually call subs because we have our ESS partner who does that to fill the positions. So just some highlights of that partnership. The fill rate has significantly increased over the course of the last year. We now have a recruitment and applicant vetting process that for support positions that we partner with ESS on, and that has been a tremendous time saver for our principals. They really sing the praises of that aspect of the partnership. It has resulted in a net savings on our substitute costs. So that's something that I thank Anna for really analyzing the invoices and our costs for that each month and providing that analysis. So we were happy to see that savings was realized. And then the other thing it has done is help develop another pipeline for our support positions. So we're hiring people in through ESS, but then we have the opportunity to bring them on permanently through Jackson County. And of the 66 positions that we've had this year that we've hired with ESS, custodian, parapro, food service, clinic aides, we have brought 6 of those on through as Jackson County employees, either hiring from paras to teachers, from subs to parapro positions, and so on. So that's given us another avenue for recruiting. And I believe that's all I have, Dr.
All right, thank you. And the board, as you said, the board has the personnel list, which will be brought forward Monday for approval. And there are really the other thing that if you have any questions about, we do need to approve the supplements and the salary schedules this at the Monday meeting. So and again, that's one of those things that we looked at in March, and normally we would bring it to the board in March in April, but considering we just got the allotment sheet and now we know what the salaries are going to look like from a state perspective, we presented those. All right, Mr. Nicholson, are you still out there?
We are. Teaching and learning team is here, and we will be incredibly brief. We've already had great conversations around the instructional model, so there's really just one item, and that is regarding the graduation requirements, some slight modifications. So I'm going to ask Ms. Wilson if she doesn't mind speaking to those. And somebody hit a timer because this will be the shortest teaching and learning reporting at a work session ever.
Thank you, Mr. Nicholson. Basically, the policy change is down at the bottom, is highlighted on the policy. It deals with moving the time in the year when we calculate honor grads and Val and Sal from the 30-week point back to the 18-week point, which is the end of the first semester. That is mainly we have a lot more students being involved in dual enrollment, and it's very difficult for us to get the an in-progress grade for those students part of the way through the second semester. So we've talked with our high school principals, and they think that it would be much better for us to just start at, to switch that back to making those determinations at the end of the first semester of the senior year. And it would also help them with planning for those processes as well, moving forward. Anybody have any questions about that?
We extended it to 30 weeks just a few years ago to try to keep kids in the game, you know, to don't, you know, but what we have found, as she said, is that with so many dual enrollment classes, it's hard to get those grades, and then it gets a little dicey, and we just think it's more appropriate. And quite frankly, what we learned is these kids are so competitive, they're not going to quit till the end. I mean, that 18 week or 30 week, they're going to take it all the way to the end. So thank you, Martha, for sharing that. And this again is one of those things that it is a revision. It's not a new policy. So unless you object to it, this will be as an action item on Monday as well.
Okay.
So Mr. Nicholson, thank you to your team for the amazing work that you all have done in the instructional delivery model. I know that's been we call it a lot of heavy lifting, and you got a great team, and then your team is pivoting some too. You've got 2 members who are going out to support schools, and we are grateful to Ms. Godfrey and Mr. Johnson, who are going out to support schools. So,
absolutely, Dr. Howard, we're blessed. We have an amazing team. I agree with that, and I just want to thank the board as well as the folks that are providing comments around the instructional model, and we're going to continue to answer the questions as they come in. So, thank you very much.
And before we break to go into executive session, Mr. Nicholson or anyone who's monitoring the chats, are there any other questions that we need to bring forth before the board that, or any other questions that we need to address publicly?
I believe we've been able to respond to all of them. There haven't been quite as many questions the last 15, 20 minutes or so. So if you're not tuned into YouTube, please do so, because we're putting the responses into the comment feature there. But I'm Miss Sane or Miss Flippin, if there's anything that I've missed that we need to address the board, please let me know. But I feel like we've responded to just about all of them.
Okay, great. Very good. Well, that's a lot. That was 2 hours worth. So that's all that we have to share.
Okay.
Other than we do need to have a very short executive session, and it is for personnel.
Okay. All right.
We stay or we go?
If it's okay, but just for social distancing purposes, maybe the 4 of you all could step out for just a second, and